now a romance novel, Save the Galaxy, by Ariana Del Rolte. Chapter 45, Plo Koon 3. Plo shut down the communist fighter after Master Tvoka finished his briefing. It was interesting to hear about the Jedi side of the Mandalorian cultural revolution that was taking place. Galadran seems to have been an attempt to destroy the true Mandalorians via the Jedi. Plo had been assured the Order was looking into it, so he would defer his thoughts on that for now. Tavoka had mentioned Qui-Gon's vilification more as a warning not to mention the man than to warn him not to mistreat any child in his care. His master was well aware of how much Plo cared about children. It was a shame to hear that Qui-Gon's mental state had fallen so far, but Plo had hoped that the mind healers would get through to him, and maybe the council would see the wisdom in not forcing a man so obviously unsuited to it into taking another Padawan. Plo did wish he had time to stop in and make sure Obi-Wan was doing okay, but it seemed the Mandalorians had adopted him wholesale, and several masters were taking interest in his well-being. The Force was urging him towards Sundari. He had started his takeoff prep when there was a knock on the shields in his mind. He quickly recognized Master Fei's Force signature and established a link. While all Jedi were empaths to one degree or another, telepathy was a lot more variable. Plo would say he was good at it, but Fei, by virtue of experience, would always be the expert. "Remember one more?" said her voice in his head.
"You are always welcome, Master Fei."
Though the fighter was going to be quite cramped.
"Are you joining my mission?"
"The Force seems to be sending me on a complete tour of Mandalore," said Fei, her humor at the idea entangling in the words. "I will act as an observer unless you need backup."
"Your support would always be welcome."
Plo infused as much warmth in the words as possible. He'd met Master Fei on a mission in the Outer Rim several years ago. Watching her expertly negotiate peace out of a 30-year war had been a humbling experience. Upon landing in Sundari, they were led to a large, airy room which had a desk and several chairs in a semicircle near one end of it. The city's governor, Almec, greeted them courteously. The people in the chairs turned out to be the city council members. After Jaster's briefing, Plo was unsurprised that they all had white skin and blonde or light brown hair. Governor Almec's purple eyes were the only hints of non-human ancestry present.
"Thank you for your warm welcome, Governor,"
said Plo. Fei had wandered over to one wall to examine some art while Plo dealt with the business.
"I have cross-checked the list of missing children you provided the Senate, with one provided by the Mandalore Justa Mariel."
"We don't recognize him," exclaimed one of the city council members, Tien.
"I understand,"
said Plo diplomatically.
"Nonetheless, roughly half of your list are safe with family or clans of the true Mandalorians."
"You didn't check up on them?" demanded another city council member, a woman named Ear. They had a faint twist of sorrow about them in the Force, and Plo suspected he'd find the name of their child on the Mandalore's list.
"It's against the true Mandalorian's creed to harm children. I will check on them if you wish, but it's much more urgent we track down the children who are not accounted for on Mariel's list."
"We appreciate your hard work, Master Koon," said Governor Almec. He turned so he was addressing Fei. "What is your plan?" Fei raised an eyebrow at being addressed. "Master Koon was about to explain his plans, Governor." Almec poorly hid a look of dismay when he had to turn back to Plo. Definitely speciest, but Plo would do his duty nonetheless.
"I would like to talk to the parents of the children who were taken. Has there been an investigation?"
"Yes, the police have been looking into it, and if you wish to talk to parents, you can talk to my son," said Alton, one of the more elderly council members. Plo paused after leaving the police headquarters to release his frustration into the Force. It was sadly clear that he and Fei were being given the runaround, though he was not sure if it was maliciousness or incompetence. The new Mandalorian's police force seemed to mostly investigate monetary crimes, petty theft, fraud, and the like. When he asked how they handled more violent crimes, he'd first been told that there were none, but eventually someone had admitted that they would look to Duke Kryz and the Kryz clan for guidance in those cases. Regardless, they hadn't followed proper procedures in investigating the kidnappings. Only a few abductions of the children on the list had even been checked, all related to or friends with council members, Fei had told him telepathically. Those investigations had determined that the children hadn't gone missing from their homes or schools, but little else. Plo decided they should double-check those conclusions, all things considered. It seemed very likely that the police had missed something. The rest of the day was also an exercise in frustration. Alton's son and husband's home had security cameras, so it was unlikely their daughter had gone missing from there. They were put in touch with several other rich parents whose children were missing. Because they were rich, they all had some type of security system, so he was able to rule out the children being taken from their homes in these cases. He wouldn't rule out the poorer residents of the city who were missing children. By then, it was late in the day, which meant the schools would be closed. They headed for the bars. Though Sundari didn't have the most happening nightlife, bars or cantinas were ubiquitous everywhere in the galaxy. Unfortunately, the people inside just stopped and stared when Plo appeared, not willing to talk in front of him. With a telepathic exchange, he left Faye to it and went to their assigned quarters. He read over the police and security reports while lightly meditating in the hopes that the force would point the way. Nothing stood out, but Faye returned with the knowledge that Duke Kriz was in residence in Sundari at the moment. The next day started with a visit to the schools of Sundari. They were assured by several principals that their schools were the safest in the galaxy. They did seem fairly secure to Plo. They had more exits and entrances than Plo would like, but the children also weren't radiating the anxiety he'd expect if their friends were disappearing from the school. He looked out over the cafeteria of one school, taking in the sea of white faces and blonde and brown hair. He wondered if the single redhead he saw suffered bullying in this conformist society.
May we speak to a friend of Lunal?
Asked the president. Of course, said the principal, quite jovially for a man discussing the disappearance of children. He summoned a nearby teacher who pointed them towards the far end of the cafeteria. As they approached, the worry the small child with ash blonde hair was radiating became obvious. This is Marco. Marco, this is Jedi Master Plo Koon, said the teacher. Plo asked if they could speak to him elsewhere, and the child hesitantly agreed. They went to one of the unoccupied classrooms, and Plo knelt down so as not to intimidate the child, while Faye stood near the door. Marco was radiating distress, curiosity, and fear through the force. Plo suspected he was the first non-human the child had ever met.
Why don't you ask me some questions, Marco? It's only fair I answer some of yours before you answer mine.
Anything? Marco asked. Plo nodded. What planet are you from?
It's called Doran and is rather far from here.
Why do you wear that mask? It's scary.
My people, the Keldors, are unable to breathe oxygen. You would have to wear a mask to visit Doran as well.
Is that why your voice is so deep?
The mask amplifies my voice since sound travels differently in oxygen-rich atmospheres.
Marco nodded, digesting the bigger words with ease. They were a bright child. How do you eat?
Well, you put your food in your mouth, then chew it before swallowing.
The child groaned. Sir! Plo chuckled.
I can ingest liquids through the mask. In order to eat solids, I would need an oxygen-free atmosphere.
He'd have to retreat to his fighter if they were here more than a couple days to ingest some solid food. His fighter had been modified to flood the main compartment with helium and Doran gas, so he had a place to take off his mask on long, unaccommodating missions.
May I ask you some questions now?
Plo asked. Marco nodded, seeming much more relaxed.
What do you think happened to Lunal?
The child looked troubled. I'm not really sure. At first I thought maybe he'd run away, but everyone knows you at least calm your friends to let them know you're safe if you do that.
Everyone?
Prompted Plo. The child gave him a scornful look. Yeah, everyone! Marco paused. Well, maybe adults don't know?
That seems likely.
Plo agreed. But he hasn't contacted me or anything, and he never acted very interested when Petra talked about her uncle and running away.
Did he come to school on the day he disappeared?
Asked Plo. I don't think so. I don't remember seeing him in assembly.
Do you know how he gets to school?
Sometimes his dad's speeder drops him off if he's late, but mostly he walks. Although Plo wasn't ruling out the school entirely, several of the children they had talked to had agreed that all the victims walked to and from school. It seemed likely that was when the children were being targeted.
Thank you for your help, Marco. It was a pleasure meeting you.
You too, they said. You'll find Lunal, right?
I will certainly do my best,
said Plo, standing up from his crouch. They made their apologies to the principal, who wished them luck. Outside the school, the artificial light under Sundari's dome was fading into the late afternoon. "Chris," said Faye.
"Chris,"
confirmed Plo.